Hail Internet, it's Matt here for the Dork Lords. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We talk about all manner of dorkly things here, whether it's sci-fi, fantasy, superheroes. We probably have a playlist about it. Feel free to check us out. Today is another in our Dork Lord of the Rings segments. And I'll be giving my quick reaction to the Rings of Power Season 1, Episode 5, Partings. I'll be doing a more in-depth recap with Paul later in the week. I had a difficult time composing my thoughts on this episode. As I mentioned last week, the show is not canon. So I made up my mind to just enjoy the show on its own merits and not constantly compare it to the lore that it's not following. But admittedly, this week tested my resolve a bit. I think it's where the show comes up with its own lore, not to fill in the gaps of Tolkien's mythology, but to actively replace that mythology. But I'm going to get to that in a bit. First, let's talk about the show that is. And we'll start with our mystery men, Adar, Halbrand, and the Stranger. For the Stranger, we got a glimpse of him saving the Harfoots and then scaring them with his unpredictable magical powers. So I think the Gandalf and the other Maya theories are still in play. Notably, it does appear to be on the full moon that they arrive, and they appear to have astrological iconography on their apparel. Also, the back of the mirror held by one of the priests shows the same constellation the Stranger was drawing earlier in the season. I think they read the skies, much like Sadak of the Harfoots, and arrived at the crater with the intention of using the mirror to somehow control the Stranger. I don't think that cuts against any of the current theories, unless they summoned him. I doubt this crew would intentionally summon Gandalf, aka Alorin. Also, I checked out the map of the Harfoot's route. We see them in the Grey Marshes. This is definitely the site of the Dead Marshes in Lord of the Rings. They're not the Dead Marshes yet, because the area gets its name and its lights as a result of the forthcoming War of the Last Alliance. I can tell where it is because of the Falls of Rauros. It's a very distinctive map feature. That's where the breaking of the Fellowship occurred and where Boromir's body was placed into a boat. We then get a break in the map, and it then trends east to a series of mountains. It appears that they've traveled a long way. This would probably have taken months. I think they're just southwest of the Sea of Rhûn, at the easternmost part of Tolkien's Middle-earth map. I would think that eventually they'd swing back west and return to Rivenian. Maybe they have a circle they travel for the seasons. The Númenóreans are now heading to the Southlands. Since Elendil and Isildur are heading east, and Eärien is staying behind, I think we're going to see Pharazôn's rise to power through her eyes. I think she's going to be our witness. On the pendulum of is Halbrand Sauron, last week the pendulum went way into the yes category. This week, I think the pendulum swung back a bit. We saw him cry. We saw him admit to doing terrible things to survive, the implication being that he was in league with the bad guys. But all of that could just be Sauron's actual story after the War of Wrath. So I think the pendulum is still at the more likely than not that he's Sauron. Less than last week, but still greater than 50%. Adar's background is still a mystery, though from his conversation with the Southlander turncoats, it appears he's not Sauron. I think my theory from last week still holds. Adar is looking for the sword in order to use its powers to force Mount Doom's eruption. We got a reference to the sword being a key. I think it's meant to unlock the power of Mount Doom and make the area habitable for orcs. Hence Adar's talk about changing the nature of the world and telling the orcs that they won't have to bear the sun's rays for too much longer. They're headed to the tower to kill the Southlander resistance. Based on Bronwyn and Arondir's talk about the tower falling, and the trailer footage of Arondir knocking chained bricks off the tower while the orcs are inside, I'm guessing the plan is to secretly move the Southlanders into hiding, away from the tower, and then when the orcs enter, crash the tower down on top of them. The storyline of the sword as a key is an example of the showrunners taking liberties with the canon. So be it. But they seem to have gone to canon-breaking extremes with the Legend of Mithril backstory. Is it true that the elves are slowly, very slowly, fading in Middle-earth? Yes, due to the marring of Arda. Essentially, Morgoth tainted the lands of Middle-earth, making elves fade over time unless they go west to Aman. Would they become wraiths by spring? No. Or the next spring. Or the next 1,000 springs. But yes, the Elven Rings had the power to hold off the fading of the elves. But the battle over the tree, with the lightning, and Mithril being the light of a Silmaril, that's completely made up by somebody other than Tolkien. Again, the show isn't canon, so it shouldn't really matter. But here it's extra annoying because it seems so unnecessary. Tolkien had a perfectly good story to tell about Mithril and how it played into the lives of elves and dwarves. Why jump through a series of seemingly unnecessary hoops to retcon a perfectly accessible storyline? I guess I'd prefer that the showrunners would reluctantly alter the canon while keeping the essential elements whenever possible. And this particular development suggests quite the opposite. Now, I've seen some theories that this is merely a fake backstory planted by Sauron to trick the elves into doing his bidding, and that perhaps Gil-galad being so uncharacteristically close-minded is because he's either Sauron himself or under the control of Sauron. And those theories are indeed possible. A Sauron-Gil-galad connection would explain a lot. But my sensors go up anytime a show's plot or character issues get attributed to, hey, maybe the issues are an intentional fake-out that'll get rectified later in a big reveal. Like, I'm skeptical. I think what we see is what we get. And that brings me to the storyline that bothered me the most, actually, from episode 5. Elrond's Oath. Oaths in Tolkien's mythology are incredibly powerful pronouncements. In fact, oaths usually result in one's death. Whether it's Feanor and his sons, Galadriel's brother, Finrod, or the men of Dunharrow, the Oathbreakers, who were cursed to undeath for breaking their oath. Oaths are not to be trifled with. Certainly, Gil-galad wouldn't suggest Elrond break his oath. If it is Gil-galad, all right, fine. I think the show is implying that Elrond upheld his oath. But did he? First, Gil-galad demands that Elrond reveal whether the dwarves are mining Mithril. And Elrond responds that he can't due to his oath. Well, guess what, Elrond? You just confirmed that the dwarves are mining Mithril. Hey, did your friend win the lottery? He made me promise not to tell. So he did. Great. Taking the oath seriously would mean Elrond would have to lie convincingly. That would be the oath. Further, we later see him showing Celebrimbor the piece of Mithril he received from Durin. Like, how is he not an oathbreaker at this point? Actually, that might explain his sorrows and misfortunes in the years to come. But I don't think that's what the show is trying to say. But the show is setting up for a major battle in the Southlands. Should be an epic showdown between good and evil. Mount Doom will erupt. We're going to have orcs in ascendancy. So let's see how they finish out the last 3 episodes of this season. I will be watching. And thank you for watching this video. I'll see you next time.